Okay, here's our flywheel housing. There's a gasket here, so I don't need to worry about putting a silicone or anything like that on it because it's already got a gasket. Best way to get them to stick like that is use weather stripping adhesive. Basically glue the gasket to the housing, and that makes it a whole lot easier to get it lined up. There's a plug right here too. This could be a pressure relief valve here, so you need to make sure that's in. Also right here, there's a pipe plug here, and this bolt out of this cover are your timing pins for this engine. That's kind of important. That brings it up to top dead center number 1, and that's where most of our settings come from. So I put 2 guide studs in here to help me line it up. And we're basically, you notice there's a dowel here and here. It's something that's not a bad idea to check your run out when you get this all done. Have issues. Cummins is pretty notorious for that. You actually have to check that on the E55s and F14s every time. Okay, there it's installed, so we'll get a couple of bolts started. There's quite a few bolts here. We'll get those all started and going in there. So part of the trick is figuring out which ones are the right length. Another way you can tell is looking at, it's got a painted head versus that's not, so that's probably not the right bolt there, if I had to guess. We'll get all these started, torque down, and then do our rear main seal and put our flywheel on so that we can use our timing marks. Okay, we're going to torque our flywheel housing bolts. You want to use a crisscross pattern like this. So these torque to 90. That's going to come over here. Kind of work from the center out, kind of like we did on everything else. And then the smaller ones, the 3/8 bolts, are going to torque to 30, or let's see, it's 35 plus or minus 7. So 42. Come through and do all the big ones. There's one more big one right here. We're just going to double check, make sure I didn't miss one. And we'll come back and torque the other ones. As soon as we get done with this, we'll install our rear main seal. Same thing with this. We're going to start in the middle and work our way up. It's not quite as critical as, say, a cylinder head, but still kind of important. These get torqued in the correct pattern. Get that one right. Make sure I got that one. Here, here, and there. Okay. Flywheel housing is installed. Now we could set up a dial indicator in here to check out of round, and basically the dial indicator, you'd set it here. As you roll the engine around, you'd say 0 it right here, and then if you had, say, plus 10 thousandths down here, and let's say you had plus 5 thousandths here and minus 5 thousandths here, that means we need to shift it to 0 it. You want to get it really close to 0, or the best you can. It's kind of a procedure to do, but it's not horrible. It's a little bit time consuming. Okay, we have 2 crankshaft seals here. And you notice one says crankshaft rotation this way, so if we're looking at the rear, it's counterclockwise, so this would be the rear seal. This one says rotation this way, so if we flip it around, that's how that would go. These are very easy to mix up. If you don't install them correctly, what it'll actually do is corkscrew the oil out. This is how there's a a corkscrew design. As this turns, it actually screws oil back into the engine. This is also what we call a unitized seal. See how the center turns separate from the outside? What that does is that gives us a nice new wear surface here on the crankshaft every time. This one doesn't have a spring in it that you can see. There's one built in inside. But basically we need an installer that's going to push here and here so that it pushes it on evenly. These are really important. If you don't have the right tools, don't be installing a front or rear main seal. Okay, here's our rear main seal installer tool. There's 12-point bolts that go in here. If these aren't correct, the seal tool will actually come over this and hang up, so you got to make sure you got the right bolts in it. There's a hole in the back, and that's got to go in that pin, because this flywheel is pinned to top dead center. If you don't have that on there correctly, well, you won't get the flywheel on, for one. But the other thing, if you took that pin out or something, it would put the engine out of time, which obviously would be a bad thing. Okay, so we're going to run these in. That's the hub tool. Basically, it's the same size as the crankshaft. This works on lots of different 3406 Cat engines anyways, C15s. C13's got a little different seal design. I'm going to tighten them up and then I'm going to back them off about a 1/16 to an 1/8 of a turn. That allows it to move just a little bit if it needs to. And here's our seal it's going to go on next. Here's the seal installation tool. You can see that it fits tight here, and it's also pushing out here, so that's the right tool for the job. So we're going to go ahead and slip our seal on here. Going to put our seal tool. We have this nut. So there's a bunch of anti-seize on that. You can see that helps center it in the hole. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to run this down, maybe not quite till it stops. Most of them, if you have the right tool, it will basically set the right depth and everything. If you had a worn out housing or crankshaft, you could actually set it back or forward a little bit if you needed to. But anyways, there's a part number on here. If you look in the service manual, it tells you exactly what tool to use to get it the right depth. Okay, basically we're going to run this in. The seal's installed. This is where the anti-seize comes into play, because there's no bearing on this tool like the 60 series tool, and a lot of your other ones actually have a bearing on there to make it easier to turn. And that looks about right, so back it off and check. Kind of see how that nut helps center that hub. It looks like it's plenty far enough in there and there. Okay, and removal is basically the same as installation. I'll take it off, take the nuts out, put the nuts back in, and put the tool back together so we don't lose all the parts and pieces. So there, and then take those out. Okay, we're going to install our flywheel now. There's a pin right here. If we look at our flywheel, there's one on it as well. That finds top dead center. Notice I have two guide studs in here to help install it. It's almost impossible without those. We may have to turn the engine in order to get those in too. Let's see, so I got guide stud needs to go in this hole. Okay, I had the engine on top dead center and it just happened to pick up just right. So that hole right there lined up with the pin. Just like so. We're going to put our bolts in, tighten them down. So I gotta lower it down just a little bit. Dang near impossible to do without guide studs in it. Okay, I'm getting all my bolts started. I'll take my guide studs out now. Put the other two bolts in. This torques to 200 plus or minus 20. I'm going to consider these wet because there's anti-seize on them. So that means we're going to torque it to about 180. We may have to hold the flywheel. That's where our engine tuning tool is going to come into play. Okay, I don't have to hold this one. That's actually going to hold where I'm at. What I could do is put a pry bar in on one of the ring gear teeth or something to hold it. You want to do this in a crisscross pattern just like a tire. It's not much different. I'm pretty good at losing my spot. The other thing I can do is mark them as I'm done torquing them, which I will after I go around and recheck them all. Should also calibrate your torque wrench yearly at a bare minimum. Be kind of a bad deal if something like this came flying off because you didn't torque your bolt correctly. This is a really nice feature on Cats. That's my timing pin to find top dead number 1. So I'm going to take this cover off, but like I said, that bolt's the one we need. And then I'm going to pull this pipe plug out right here. This bolt is going to slip in here. Oops. Here's our turning tool. It's got a 1/2-inch drive ratchet head in it. Basically what we're going to do is turn in the direction of engine rotation. So that's... Oh, I'm going to go back past it. See there, it fell in. So I'm going to pull it out. I'm going to go past it because I'm spinning clockwise on the flywheel right now. So I want to come up counterclockwise to my timing pin hole, and this will actually thread in here. It's locked at top dead number 1 right now. Should be ready to do any timing procedures we need to do. But that's how, also you could put that ratchet in here to hold for torquing those bolts we just did on the flywheel.